Inspire me, I see anything, there you are. Come on, baby, don't you worry, dance for me. Can you handle me? That's too much better. You're gonna dance with me tonight. Come dance with me tonight. Be my chest, believe if you like what you see. Move, you can hang with me. I got you, so let me get on me. Don't you think I know you ready? I need you ready, go see it. I need you ready, go see it. My body's so cool in this shit,
Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is January 18th, and we've got a great show planned for you. During the first hour, we're going to be joined by longtime friend and friend of the show, Coach Wade Johnson, for an episode of Fathers and Sons. And then later in the show, we're going to talk about how the speed in which you go up the stairs could predict your heart health. It's going to be very interesting. Before we do that, of course, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods. Their tasty pastry is amazing. The new birthday cake flavor. Excuse me. I ate carbs yesterday. I feel it today, even in my throat. The tasty pastry has 0 sugar and 20 grams of protein. It's delicious. It's fluffy like an apple turnover. They're fantastic. Keep them in the house. The kids will love them. You'll love them. They're a better alternative for a lot of people than even protein bars, because nowadays protein bars have so much fiber in them, and a lot of people have gotten to the point where they just can't take that fiber anymore. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10, not only to save 10% off everything site-wide, but to let them know you learned about them here on Superhuman Radio. And now, without further delay, bring my guest on, my buddy, my pal. We will have a nice conversation during before the show started today. How you doing, Coach?
I'm great. It's always good to be with you, Carl.
So you are a dad. Actually, Natalie Kapitsky, who is my director of communications and social media guru, and she's actually in the background right now helping me keep the show together, was under the impression that you had 4 children, but you have
right.
one son,
right.
And that is your son Wes, who I met when he was a very young man. And I say man because Wes was never a boy. I mean, Wes was squatting like 600, 700, 800 pounds at what age? 16?
When he was his 16th birthday, a meet that I actually ran, he squatted 600 pounds. And then when he was 17 years old, he squatted 805. About a month after he turned 17, he was a junior in high school, and he squatted 805.
Yeah. So I have a hard time calling that Wes that I knew back then a boy.
Well, of course. Sure.
Maturity level and age-wise, he was a boy. And you've done an amazing job with Wes. Wes is a fine young man. I know that he had his excursion away from strength, and for a while he got a profession that's helping people, right? Because he's a physical therapist, right?
Yeah, he is a massage therapist. Yes.
Okay. And so, but he's come back. He's come back to his roots. I know he's training at the Ogre Compound again, right?
Well, he trained some. What he did is he's been married now. He and Joni have been married now for, I want to say, 7 years. And they bought a house 4 or 5 years ago. And he has a 1-car garage that he has turned into a training studio where he can train a little bit more often at home. And then he has clients that are, in his proximity. He probably lives, at probably 20 minutes away. And so with his schedule, because he's got another business besides what he does for work, and, and he's coaching people. So he's in here about once a week now. But the reason why he left strength is we had him on the show that you had us on another show, the two of us. When one of my training partners, our training partner, abruptly passed away right there in the gym.
Right.
And Chuck was a pretty big guy, but he had a lot of health issues, and that wasn't a mystery. And that had such a profound effect on him. So he went through this process of losing a bunch of weight. And but he has since then, in the last 15 years, he's competed in a couple of powerlifting meets, and he tries to stay, a little bit on the smaller side, than obviously me. But he still trains very, very consistently.
So over the years, I've heard you talk about your dad. We were just talking a little bit about him extraneously to the topics we were talking about. Who had the biggest impact on you as a young boy, and that you think really led into the person you've developed into?
Oh, without a question, it was my father. I idolized my dad. It was one of those things that when I was a young boy, he worked. Try to give you an idea where he worked in Florida was where we're from. In Homestead, Florida, it's called Turkey Point, or it was many, many years ago. And there's 2 nuclear reactors there in Homestead. And he worked for the heavy excavation.
You dropped out right when you said 2. Your internet dropped out. There were 2, and then you finished with excavation.
Okay. There was 2 nuclear power plants there at Turkey Point, and his company, they did heavy excavation, dug the cooling canals.
Okay.
And so I would occasionally get to go to work, and he would wear, construction boots, blue jeans, and a white T-shirt. So I had to have the very same thing. And if there was a certain way that he dressed, certain shoes, then I had to have them as well. And I was always enamored with how big and how powerful and how strong. He had a very commanding presence, and so I always looked up to that. And as I've gotten older, not only do I look like he did as he got older, but he and I sounded a whole lot. We sound a whole lot alike. And a lot of people, when I would answer the phone, even as a young kid, we've all of us, Wes, my father, and myself, have always had very deep voices, and so a lot of people would mistake me for my father.
That's so funny.
And so, I used to those guys. The people from the swamp are a very different breed of people, and they would take me out in airboats and helicopters. As long as my dad said it was okay. And I'll never forget. I can't remember the man's name, but he said, my dad's name was Harold. He goes, Harold, I think you look more like him than he looks like you. So that's, because I was definitely a mini him. There is no question about it. And as Wes, has some of his mother's features. So he doesn't look, as spitting image, as I did with my father. You can definitely tell that Wes and I are father and son, but that's, that's the connection with my father.
Who else in your life? So like for me, he served in active duty overseas, and he wasn't a big gun enthusiast, let's say. And so I learned to hunt from my friend, Joe DiStefano's father, Joe also. Who else had him? As because you kind of grab pieces of different people as you grow up, and you think, I like that, I'm going to incorporate that into me. Were there any other people, teachers, maybe anything like that?
Yes, and we always called him Jones. I had an art teacher in high school, and his first name escapes me, honestly, because we never called him. We called him we didn't call him Mr. Jones. He wanted to be called Jones, and what he instilled in me. A lot of people don't know that I have an artistic background, and that's another story. But when drawing, and he really he pushed me to be creative. And as a musician, learning that skill set from drawing, how to push the boundaries of what let me give you an example. We have you'll buy these pieces of art and it has numbers and you color them in and everybody shades and stuff like that. And it's a picture, but it's what you do outside the lines that really creates the art. And that was something that he really, instilled in me, is like, push that boundary a little bit, go the extra even though you don't think it's good, just go full in and extend yourself as far as you can, because it's always expanding your horizons. How do you learn to get good at something? Well, you take something that you're not very good at and you keep doing it until you get better at it. And that's oversimplification, but he really had a profound effect on me. And he was a high school teacher, and that made a big impact on me.
Usually when boys start to go through puberty, they start to search for their own autonomy. It's even recognized in psychology, in the sciences. And a lot of times when they start to search for their own autonomy, one of the things they have to do is kind of break with their dad in order to become men themselves. And a lot of times it can lead to conflict. Like, I remember when I was going through this with my dad, I actually cursed. And then I thought I was going to get walloped. Did you and Wes have that when he was getting of a certain age?
It was probably after he got out of high school. Wes and I have always been exceptionally tight, but like from when he was very small up until 18, 19 years old, we never had those issues. Having been a single father and him living with me, it kind of created a situation where we depended on one another. So we never had that, like going through junior high school years. Now, after he graduated and he got through therapy school, then that's where, he and I would kind of butt heads. And I think that's what you're discussing.
Yeah. Did he ever
kind of
challenge you? Yeah, like challenge you about something, like not hey Dad, I'm going to beat you up, but he started to disagree with you, or
Yes, and it was like the first time I really saw it was when he and Joni moved back to the Mount Juliet area where we're at, and we would kind of butt heads on coaching or how somebody should do something and things of that nature. So that it was one of those things, because I never went through those things when Wes was a teenager. I did not have that skill set of coping with that very well. When it did happen, as he became, a young adult, so to speak.
Yeah. And so did you give him the latitude to have a different opinion, or did you, because I think as fathers, we want the best for our sons, but sometimes
of course
we think we know best too at the same time,
Well, I tell you what, it was a hard lesson, and being a coach has really helped me, get through some of those situations, because it's hard when not to take those situations personally. It's like, I'm doing all this for you. Why are you being a little pinhead, And what I've learned is, it's like, sometimes I've learned initially not so much, but as time went on, it's like, let's let him have his say. And then once he's had something to say, then I'm going to go, well, let me offer you my perspective and hear it. It's not enough to tell him what I think. I got to back that up with why I think that,
right.
And I have to be very careful for it not to be primarily an emotional response. It has to be something where it's like, because anytime I respond emotionally, especially him and I, because it's basically two silverback gorillas, and it's always going to be that. So I have learned to really take a step back and give him that levity and that latitude to even be wrong, and say whatever he needs to say, because he's not going to get that in a lot of the other relationships in life that he has. And he can say things to me that he probably can't say to his wife without it causing a big ordeal. But I learned that you have to stay open-minded long enough to go, let's see where this goes, and see if what he's initially discussing, if that's really the issue, or if there's something bigger in the background that we just need to keep the channel of conversation open long enough for him to reveal what's really going on, because that has happened, a handful of times over even the past couple of years. And I can give you examples and all those things are examples of where he was right, but he wasn't effective. That's probably something that I've tried to really, really instill in him as he became a young man and then was married. It's like, hey, there's right and wrong, and I understand all that, but there's also being effective. And you're going to learn that being effective may sometimes be more important than whether you're right or not.
That should be always. So what about discipline? What was your position on discipline with Wes?
He and I always had a very firm understanding of who was in charge, but it was never one of those things where, I like, hey, I'm the boss and it's because I say so. He was always very respectful. And like I said, because I was a single father, when he moved in with me because of, the better school situation and so forth, he understood the challenges that he and I would be facing. And it was rare. The probably the biggest issue that I had with Wes growing up is he would always be ready to go to school. But like, we trained really early in the morning, and I would come upstairs and he would still be in bed when we would need to be downstairs training and the guys are there. I'm like, Wes, it's time to squat. You're late and you live here, and
you live here.
So, and when he was big, you just would have to be careful. It's like, look, son, I just made a pound of spaghetti and a gallon of tea. Don't eat all of it tonight. You got to have something for lunch, and those types of things. But he and I never, it was one of those things where I think it was because I didn't rule with an iron fist, that he understood that probably what my father instilled in me is there's a way that you speak to people and you can have a commanding presence, and they tend to understand that may not be the guy that I want to trifle with.
Right.
And so I have one incident when he was 18 that he really tried me, and we had a very strong discussion about it. And other than that, I think because of how open he and I have always been with each other, we didn't have a lot of the issues that a lot of other, father sons have. Now we've had our moments, but coming up, he understood that, I'm in charge and this is the way we're going to do things. And, but I also, by the same token, I was always, I think what really helped him and I is making sure that I ask him, hey, what do you think about this?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? I mean, when you met me, Chris and I were in a relationship, and he was very close to her. And when we abruptly split up, he obviously was very concerned with me, but I also wanted to know. I said, no holds barred. You say whatever you want to, however you need to communicate it. How do you feel about this? What do you make of this? And so, because I think, especially, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but being a coach and working with kids, you see from a different vantage point, that when you're not the parent, but you're the coach and you have a parental, influence on a kid, you see those difficulties in communicating. And with boys, it just, I never wanted Wes to be afraid to come to me with anything. And by and large, we've had conversations where I'm like, I really don't want to know this. I don't want to know this. But I was so grateful, that he would come and discuss those things. It wasn't always comfortable, but he was open enough. And like I said, he tried my patience a few times, but by and large, but we didn't have that issue. I think just allowing him to always being able to interject his thoughts, even if it wasn't going to change what we were doing, but having the ability to have a say, I think made a big impact on our relationship when he was growing up in the house.
Do you think powerlifting, the fact that you both shared a common sport, made it easier for you as a dad?
Easier. I think it gave us continuity. I think it's one of those things. We always want the best for our kid, but we always love the fact that they want to follow in our footsteps. And I always wanted Wes to do whatever he wanted to do and be as good at it. And but he wanted to power lift and he made sure that he had a conversation with me when he was maybe 13 years old. He said, he asked me, he said, "So what do you think about me powerlifting?" And I said, "Well, I would love for you to do that, but what I want to make sure is that it's something that you want to do. I don't want you to do it because that's what I do. I don't want to put pressure on you that because I'm a power lifter, you should be. Do you have the propensity to be big and strong?" Well, obviously the answer is yes. Even as a young boy, at 12 years old, he deadlifted over 300 pounds at a powerlifting meet. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what he wants to do. He may want to play violin,
Right.
And I said, "So make sure that you want to do it." And he goes, "Well, I think with you helping me that not only could I be good, I might be able to be great at this." And that's, the next 5 years, I coached him and competed with him. And so it gave us a connection where a lot of fathers and sons, where they were not athletes or they do, something, there wasn't a connection that like Wes and I had when we shared, not only that he was powerlifting, but he also powerlifted at a very, very high level.
Were there any other competitors his age at that level when he was competing?
No, it was one of those things where he would be very motivated because we had a pretty strong crew of guys. And so his target wouldn't be kids his age. There was one kid that was in Sevierville, Tennessee, that had broken records that I had actually done an article on for, I think it was called Power Mag. This is several years ago. And he and Wes met, and Wes actually, they thought I actually handled Josh at the WPA Worlds probably back in 2003. And he hit this ridiculous bench press, probably in the mid 400s. And we thought, no kid will ever touch that. Well, a few years later, my son came through and obliterated that record. And so he never really had anybody, that was a contemporary at that age. So he always lifted, with full grown men. And so that became his target. I want to lift more than so-and-so in the group or whatever the case may be.
You ever talk to him about girls and then women as he was growing up? And what kind of messages did you try? What messages did you feel compelled as a father to instill in him about women?
Well, it's one of those things where I always wanted him to understand how.
Hey, sorry. I just coughed over you and killed your mic. I'm such a jerk. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I always tried to instill in him to always first, no matter who you're dealing with, but especially with women, that you hold them in high esteem and respect. And I remember he and I having a conversation about a girlfriend at the time, and he was young, 14 years old, maybe 14, 15. And he said, "I just never want her to be in a position where anything she does with me, regardless of what it is, that she would regret it." And so we always talked about, how would you want to be treated, why you would want to be treated that way. And we always kept things open about whether it be sex or whatever the case may be. Sorry about the dogs. And like I said, because he and I were so open with one another, let me shut that door real quick.
Okay. Take your time. I coughed over you anyway.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Don't worry.
So I was always careful to try to be broad, not very specific. And again, because it always gave him a platform to let me know how he felt about a certain situation. And, so he was always very open with me about those things. And again, what I always wanted him to do is be respectful. And he always was.
Yeah. The climate for men today is really interesting. I'll say interesting. We have toxic masculinity out there. You have lots of situations where there's apparently miscommunication of who wants to have sex, and the next day the guy is getting arrested. It's really a tenuous date. Like, I wouldn't want to be dating. I wouldn't want to be dating. Now Wes is not dating anymore, but when he did start dating, did you have any kind of discussions? Were there situations that you felt needed to be talked about, especially when it came to sex?
Well, it's one of those things where I always told him, not only about being respectful, but make sure that regardless of what you're getting involved in, whether it be physical or otherwise, that there's other aspects. It's one thing just to have sex, but generally that there was a mental and emotional and even spiritual attachment to all those things, regardless of what you feel about religion. I get there's definitely a spiritual thing, a mental thing, and an emotional thing. And what I would hate for you and anyone that you chose to be with, is that you walked away from the situation, and once the situation was done, you were like, man, that was a bad idea. And that there's consequences. It's not just getting to, we try to scare everybody. She could get pregnant. Okay.
Yeah.
You could get a disease, and it's like, I think there's a bigger picture there. What if you love this person? What if you have those intimate feelings? You have to the big thing that I try to do with him, there's cause and effect for everything that we do, everything. And that there's also always a price to pay. And there's a negative connotation typically attached to that. And I wanted to dispel that for him, to go, hey, understand that I had a conversation with him when he was about 11 or 12, when I knew he was a big, powerful kid. And one of the things that I really tried to impress upon him is that when you're a big, strong person, you also you got to understand that there's a really big responsibility with that.
Right.
You can't just get pissed off and punch the crap out of somebody, because you could see. It's one thing to bloody someone's nose. It's another thing to break their face. And, it gets even in his day and age as a kid and a teenager, now it's, exponentially, more complicated.
Right.
But I wanted him to understand that in that situation, there's a lot of cause and effect. But I wanted to make sure that it wasn't about fear, and there wasn't a lot of negative connotations, but that with that cause and effect, with the price that you pay, that there's a lot of things going on, and I didn't want him to attach. I wanted him to be very open. I didn't want him to attach anything negative or scary and again, be very open about all those things. So we did have those conversations. We never really discussed much about the mechanics of all of it. I let him, come to me as he wanted to.
Right.
But then he understood that, no matter what the situation was, that there was a great deal of responsibility that was associated with that. So I didn't want it to be fearful or negative or scary, because we that's the direction we typically go as parents, is to go, hey, there's a lot more going on here than a little bit of sex. There's a lot of things that are at play, and things can go awry really quick if you don't pay attention. And so that was the relationship he and I had about those things.
I want to take a quick commercial break. I want to come back and talk about something you just pointed out, because, Wes really was a phenom, right? Like, I mean, when you really think about his level of strength at that age and his decision to walk away, I understand why he walked away, and it's valid. But, did you ever have a selfish moment? This is what we want to talk about when we come out of the break. To like try to lure him back in. Like this kid doesn't understand. He could be the greatest powerlifter that ever lived. And so let's talk about that when we come back. We're talking today with Coach Wade Johnson, one of my favorite people on this planet. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to massage therapists can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering better today. January is World Carnivore Month, and more people are finding the carnivore diet alleviates the symptoms of autoimmune disorders as well as digestive and gut problems. But there's one issue. The carnivore diet is called the low residue diet because you're not eating plants and you're not getting fiber, and the protein takes longer and longer to digest. Some people notice that they are very constipated in the early phases of their carnivore diet adventure. Well, I have the solution. It's a product by Bioptimizers called P3OM. P3OM is a probiotic that is specifically designed to digest protein. In fact, P3OM doubles its population in your gut every 20 minutes, making it easier and faster to digest the protein you're consuming on your carnivore diet. If you find the carnivore diet is hard for you to stick to, don't give up. Just add P3OM into the mix and you'll love it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3OM and use the code SUPERHUMAN. That's SUPERHUMAN and save 10% off today. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicel is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicel is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicel. Go to shrnetwork.biz/live better. Use code SHR and save 20% off today.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. So tomorrow we're going to start a new secret word contest. Every week we're going to give away 1 box of legendary tasty pastries. And all you have to do is during the commercial break, there will be planted in between random spot a secret word. And when you hear that word, all you have to do is email that word to onair@superhumanradio.net and just tell me either the commercial that preceded it or the commercial that followed it. Very simple. You do that and your name will be entered. And every week we're going to give away 1 box of tasty pastry. Very, very simple stuff. So start listening tomorrow for the secret word. It'll be easy to hear because it'll be my silly voice saying it in between two commercials. So it should jump out at you. So there was no doubt that at his young age, Wes displayed superhuman strength. And under your guidance, I mean, look at Serena and Venus Williams and their dad's influence, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Under your guidance, he very well could have been one of the greatest powerlifters and strongmen of all time. I'm sure he would have been started doing strongman because it would have been the natural progression to just leverage and repurpose his strength and do that. And when he came to you after Chuck passed, and that was a very tragic point, even you were very affected by that. I remember that.
Oh, absolutely.
And so he comes to you and he says, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. Is that how it happened?
Well, basically what we were training part-time here at what has become the Ogre compound. And our home gym was in a town over 15 minutes away in Hermitage. And it was where we did the rest of our training. And he told me, he goes, hey, I want to lose weight and I want to do bodybuilding. And I think that was the moment, not only with Chuck's passing and how that had an effect on him and the changes that he wanted to make. I think that was the moment for him. He had been big all of his life. And he said, you know, I've always been so big all of my life. And I want to go a different direction with this. I still want to work out and I'll still train some with you, but I want to do my own thing. And now I will not lie. I won't deny it. It crushed me, you know, because the years that he and I spent in the gym and going to meets and stuff like that and doing strongman together. And, you know, the days of the WPO where all the top powerlifters in the world knew who he was. You know, I was like, he's throwing this opportunity away. And, but it was one of those things too, where I was like, I'm going to, you know, they're forcing him or trying to coerce him. Now, did I have conversations with him, you know, to go, hey, you know, make sure this isn't an emotional response to something else. And because I knew that Chuck's passing had a pretty profound effect on him. Of course, I didn't know until we did the show that was the main catalyst for him losing weight. And, but I didn't want it to be one of those things where he stopped what he was doing, he lost some weight, and then he regretted it. And to his credit, you know, he made the decision. And, you know, I as hard as it was, I just let him go ahead and do it. But I did have a couple of conversations going, hey, are you sure, you know, we could be doing these things? You have the potential to be these things. And he wanted to go a different direction.
Have you had conversations with Wes in the more recent, after the transformation, after his relationship, moving back? Did he ever say to you, man, I would have been so strong by now?
He has, you know, said those things, but he doesn't appear, which thankfully doesn't appear to have any regrets.
Good.
You know, he made his decision and went a different direction. And I think it's opened up doors to him, you know, professionally and both as a therapist and then as a coach or trainer, if you will. And that's what he enjoys. And so, you know, it's not exactly the same thing as I do, but it expanded his horizons. And he knows that he had a lot of potential. But it's interesting. I'll tell you this. I started probably in the last 3 or 4 months where I'm doing strongman stones once a week. And it was like, I want to get proficient at this again, not for any competitive reason, but because I think the more that I do it myself versus what I used to do 10 years ago, or when I won nationals in strongman or whatever the case may be, at 55 years old, even if I'm not competing, that my guys that, you know, look to me to coach them, that when they see their 55-year-old coach still loading a 300-pound stone, I think that's important. but it's not seamless. When you get older, as you well know, things don't work the same way. And when I was, because I used to be pretty strong, but I'm not that strong anymore. And so it's been a process. And he'll come in on Wednesdays every now and then and train with me. And he is so fast, and he's got such big hands, and still has world-class grip strength still.
Right. Yeah,
And
because I remember at like 16, he was doing the Captains of Crush, like the top one. He was closing them, remember? Wasn't he?
When he was 14, we went to, I think it was the Arnold, and he went to the booth, and I forgive me for not remembering the guy's name, but he took a number 2 Captain of Crush, and he was 17 years old, and could close the number 2 so fast he could make it click. And then he put it in his left hand, and he would do the same thing. And the guy came over and said, there's not a lot of people in the world that can close it to make it sound like that and do it with both hands. And they're talking for a few minutes, and I'm just watching because I know what's going to happen. And finally he looks at Wes and realizes this isn't a man he's talking to.
Right.
This is a 17-year-old teenager. Because I'll never forget. He goes, "Son, how old are you?" And he goes, "I'm 17." And he's like, "WTF?" I mean, he says it out loud in front of because at the time we'd never seen anything like that, out of a teenager. But Wes reminded me, I was struggling with some of the weight because I'm bigger now, and I'm trying to move fast, and he is so fast, and his hands are so strong. And he said, "Look, I'm not overcoming an injury like you are." And he goes, "You got to remember, I'm still pretty much a badass." So fair enough. That is certainly my son. So, but he knows that he could have done some things, but he just felt like the price was going to be too big. And that's what it came down to for him.
Do you think speaking to all the soon-to-be fathers or fathers of very young boys right now, do you think that there are certain key attributes that you feel that you have made sure you instilled in Wes growing up that all boys should have in order to become successful, productive citizens and men?
This is going to sound maybe ridiculous to some. I try to make sure all the kids that come to the gym that are male, that they understand how important a handshake is, and that they shake a man's hand firmly and make eye contact, because that's our point of communication. And body language is a real thing. It's like, behavioral messages that dogs give, calming signals and stuff like that. Like, I'm wagging my tail, but I'm about to bite you, or I'm really afraid, even though I'm acting happy. And I told Wes, early on, when you make eye contact and you show a man, that you have a firm handshake and that you're engaged, he's speaking to you when you shake his hand, it's a sign of respect, and respect is something I've really worked hard not only to instill in him, but in all the kids that I coach. I'm a firm believer in it takes a village. We've had that conversation before. And so those are the things, in that you always speak in a respectful manner. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. No, sir. And that you listen first, talk later, and especially when you're dealing with adults. And then understand that the adults in your life, your coaches, your teachers, your clergy, your parents, those types of things, those adults, they command respect. That's probably something that I wouldn't call it old school, but that's something that is clearly missing in our society right now. So that is something that I've always tried to instill, not only in Wes, but in these kids. And then I make the parents understand that, look, you do what you want to do outside the walls of the gym, but in here, this is how we do things, and this is why. So Grant, that is no longer with us, but grew up in the gym. He was not a very respectful kid. He started coming here when he was 10, and I taught him why it was so important to no, sir, yes, sir. I said, sometimes it can come down to you got yourself in a little bit of a pickle at school, and by nature of you being respectful and speaking respectfully, it may get you out of that pickle, or at least lessen, the issue surrounding it. And that came to fruition, and he even told me, after the issue was over with, he goes, now I know why you told me all those things and why it was so important. So it is something that we definitely, all of us collectively, really try to instill in these young boys.
Do you think that it's more important for people who are imposing and strong to be extra respectful because we represent a phenotype that most people would look at and think you're a jerk, you're probably a bully, and number two, and I have to believe your father instilled this in you, but when you have what it takes to stop a man quickly, there's no need for you to be aggressive at all. You can be very gentle and kind. I mean, I would consider you a gentle giant. Did you think that was very important to you from your father to you and now from you to Wes?
Well, yeah, in my dad's youth, he wasn't always so gentle. And I think that's something that we all make mistakes when we're younger, and even younger fathers. And as we learn, we try to teach as our sons become young, teenagers and young men, that, hey, I know you remember this situation. Here's where I went wrong. And here's, what you need to understand about that situation. And, but definitely, my dad was a very big, powerful man, and he had a temper to go along with it. And, so he was always quick to instill. He knew that he was hot-headed, but he didn't want me to be hot-headed, because it landed him in trouble even as a young father.
Right.
And so it definitely is something that is impactful. And one of the things that I try to really instill in all my young athletes is that what we do as athletes is a privilege. And I always try to tell them, whether they're wrestlers or, like here, a lot of even kids are lifters. Lifting is something we do. It's not who we are. How we do those things is who we are. How we execute our workload and how we behave, that is who we are. And so those are the things that I try to stress, about them being important, in that we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Not that you get a freak because you're a great athlete, you don't have to be a good student. You should be a better student. You should set the tone. If we work hard, if you'll give me the effort that in the gym, that if you'll give that effort at school, it makes you unstoppable. And I've had this conversation with some of the kids. Just think, even if you're not great at lifting, but you work hard and you do your homework and you pay attention to everything I tell you, if you apply that skill set to your schoolwork and the things that you're really impassioned about, you're unstoppable. You'll do anything that you want to with your life. And there's never a time where along that pathway, whatever greatness you're going to strive for, that if you're gentle with people, I never said be a walking man. I made a post on Facebook a couple of days ago about let's let the first thing that we do is be kind to one another. I didn't say be a walking man, because I'm at 55. This thing's as big as a sledgehammer. I'll knock you out. But if that's my first response, then it makes me the Neanderthal that people would picture me to be.
Right.
Instead of, you would never know that I was educated. You would never know that I was articulate, or that I was a musician, or that I wrote poetry, or that I've done art, or that I've traveled the world as a musician. You'd never know those things by looking at me. You have to have a platform. And when you're kind, when you're gentle, when you're generous with who you are, and people understand, because one of the things that I instilled in Wes, and this was something he did a lot on his own, when there was people that had issues or struggled, or had educational issues, he would be right there to take up for them. And that was something that I was always very proud of him for. You would see kids that had a few issues, special education and stuff like that, and he would never treat them differently. And I told him that. I said, it's by the grace of God that a lot of us aren't homeless or hungry, or we don't have some sort of disease. We all had gone to school with somebody growing up that had health issues, that didn't live as, was not afforded the time that you and I have been afforded.
Right.
And so that is something that I think, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard because of what we do. And that gives us a platform where I hope it makes us more I would never want any of my kids to be afraid of me, to be afraid to come to me and talk, hey, coach, I got this problem. Absolutely. I want you to feel comfortable, and that we have that situation. But the only way to build that is that if we hold ourselves to a higher, level, so to speak. So yes, I mean, that's a long answer to what you were asking.
You're listening to an episode of Fathers and Sons. This is our second season. I decided to do this show because I feel that raising boys into men is a very important job, and it's the father's job to do that. I know there's a lot of single moms out there that are going to say, well, I'm doing it too. Well, I understand that. But boys take signals from the men in their lives. That's usually the father, but it could be an uncle, it could be a neighbor. And this is where they learn to be men. And if we're going to make better men, we have to start out being better fathers. At the top of the hour, we're going to be joined by Dr. Jesús Peteiro to talk about you can test your heart at home if you have a flight of stairs. And so this is going to be a fascinating discussion. So stay tuned for that. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. By now, you're aware of the cognitive benefits of nootropics. My friends over at Pure Nootropics are giving my listeners 10 to 30% off their already great prices on over 70 high-quality nootropics. Stock up on DHM so you can feel good after your holiday celebration, or try the Superhuman Stack to boost your brain and energize your day. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure, that's PURE, and start saving today. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. January is World Carnivore Month, and more people are finding the carnivore diet alleviates the symptoms of autoimmune disorders as well as digestive and gut problems. But there's one issue. The carnivore diet is called the low residue diet because you're not eating plants and you're not getting fiber, and the protein takes longer and longer to digest. Some people notice that they are very constipated in the early phases of their carnivore diet adventure. Well, I have the solution. It's a product by Bioptimizers called P3OM. P3OM is a probiotic that is specifically designed to digest protein. In fact, P3OM doubles its population in your gut every 20 minutes, making it easier and faster to digest the protein you're consuming on your carnivore diet. If you find the carnivore diet is hard for you to stick to, don't give up. Just add P3OM into the mix and you'll love it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3OM and use the code SUPERHUMAN, that's SUPERHUMAN, and save 10% off today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicel is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicel is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicel. Go to shrnetwork.biz/live better. Use code SHR and save 20% off today.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're talking today with Coach Wade Johnson about being a father and raising a boy. So, how do you hope someday when you're gone, hopefully I'll be gone before you, how do you want Wes to finish this sentence? My father was
my best friend and biggest cheerleader. I think that pretty much, that probably sums it up for me. You know, that through the times now where he and I kind of butt heads on ideas and where we stand and things like that, that through all the things, especially my mistakes when he was younger, that he always knew that no matter what, that I loved him, that I wanted the absolute best for him, and that even with my limitations, that I did the very best by him. And that with his powerlifting career, with his marriage, with him buying a house, that I always was the first one to champion his cause. And I think that's my responsibility. And, you know, so I hope that's, you know, he doesn't always act like that's how he feels, but I hope that, you know, when all is said and done, that he knew that, you know, I was always right there. You know, I wasn't perfect. I wasn't mistake-free, not even by a long shot. But, you know, that I would stand in front of the line, you know, to make sure that he was always safe and had his place to go, so to speak. So that, you know, and of course, you know what he means to me. You've seen us together. And it's tough not being emotional even now. So,
you know, it's funny. You said something earlier about you look like your dad now and all that sort of stuff. And all the young guys listening to this show, you better really like your father, because you're going to be
it's one of those things that I have written about this, where I hear there's certain things. I mean, I know we're up against it, but I remember I was about 18 or 19 years old.
We got plenty of time. Good.
I was about 18 or 19 years old, you know, and I look like a man, you know, dark, long hair, full beard, big guy. And I told my mother, I was in the kitchen of our house, that I was headed to town and just going to go hang out. And she goes, "Are you looking to get into some trouble?" You know, being funny. And I said, "There's no trouble to get into in Manchester, Tennessee." You know, it was a little one-horse town. So my dad, being as big as he was, he leaned across the bar of the kitchen table, and he looked up at me and he said, "Enough to last you a lifetime." And that always had such I use that to this day, you know, that had such a profound effect on me. And, you know, and I've had moments like that with Wes. And, so I've written about this, like I was saying, where there's certain things that I say now, or certain ways that I feel, where I can hear my father's voice echo in mine. Like, well, you know, you're like, you know, holy crap, I have become my dad.
I know.
And it's not, you learn now at my age, and this has happened even in my younger days, or that's not such a bad thing,
No.
And,
It's
there
really
was times. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, after my father passed away, as the years passed after he passed away, I find myself growing greater appreciation for who he was as a man and what he did with us as a family. And, my mother used to say to me, I hope you end up with somebody like you as a son someday. Because like when she would be mad at me, like she'd wish me. Yeah, I hope you end up with a kid just like you, she used to say to me. And the funny thing is that my father was so much more sensitive than I ever realized. Now that I have life under my belt and experience under my belt,
Sure.
and I look back at the way he handled this and I think to myself, he wasn't that brute that the world made him look like. He was this gentle, sensitive man who didn't have all the skills to handle what life was throwing at him. But
Right.
it's sad that it takes them passing. That's all I can say.
Well, that's the thing that I keep trying to say to Wes is that, it's like, take all this in, and I'll give you a quick example, and I know got to go, but he has a neighbor behind him that is an elderly gentleman, and how Wes dotes over him and helps him, in those things, and the relationship that he has established with him, I think is a direct result of the relationship that he has had with adults, especially his mother and myself. And that is something that brings me a great deal of joy, because you can be big and strong and formidable, but you can also be gentle, kind, and loving and sensitive. And that's not a sign of weakness, and what I'll leave you with is I still believe, and I've really tried to instill this in him, that regardless of our status in life and all those things, that to me, the most important thing, the thing that we're charged with, is taking care of one another. And it's and what life is really about is the relationships we have. And, so I couldn't be happier with the young man, that Wes has become. And I watch him with other people. And though when he's teaching as well and coaching, and that brings me a great amount of joy, even though he and I are different people.
Yeah. Look, this has been a great episode. I want to thank you
I
so
really
much.
appreciate it.
Yeah, this is fun. All right, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, brother.
All right, talk to you later. All right, we're going to take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be back on science, and we're going to put our emotions aside. We bury our feelings in our muscles, and you need bigger muscles so you can bury more feelings. Remember that. No, I'm only kidding around. I'm just joking. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. By now, you're aware of the cognitive benefits of nootropics. My friends over at Pure Nootropics are giving my listeners 10 to 30% off their already great prices on over 70 high-quality nootropics. Stock up on DHM so you can feel good after your holiday celebration, or try the Superhuman Stack to boost your brain and energize your day. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure, that's PURE, and start saving today. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? The rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to massage therapists can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering better today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're going to talk about science now. We're going to get off of the emotional ride we just had, which was a very, very good discussion. We're joined by Dr. Jesús Peteiro. Am I pronouncing your last name properly, sir?
Maybe Peteiro.
Peteiro. Okay.
Yes.
And you have just published a very interesting paper, which is not only exciting for people to self-diagnose, but also for physicians. Why this paper? What research preceded yours that made you think that this needed to be investigated?
Okay, just the background of, I'm going to explain a little the background of this. We have been working with this. Can you hear me? Yes.
Very good. You're perfect.
Okay. We've been testing with or imaging in our laboratory for a long time, almost 30 years. And we know that this exercise testing for patients who can walk on a treadmill more or less 9 minutes, which translates in 10 METs or metabolic equivalents of exercise capacity. We can explain what does it mean later. But the figures are 9 minutes on the treadmill or 10 METs or exercise capacity. These patients had very, very good outcome with low mortality for any cause. I mean, cardiovascular, cancer, or non-cardiovascular non-cancer. But when people ask me or ask us physicians, what does it mean 10 METs? What does it mean 9 minutes on the treadmill? How could you translate that to common activities, to daily activities? And that's why we decided to investigate this matter, choosing an exercise that is very good quantified by a person who simply by walking up some stairs. In the study, it was 4 flights of stairs. That's the reason of the study.
Now, the average flight of stairs has about 12 steps. Am I right about that, or is it 10 steps, 10 or 12 steps?
The average number for stairs in a flight, I think that are between 16 and 20 stairs.
Oh, you're talking about
Okay.
In a building,
The-
not a home,
the-
not a
the-
home, not a home.
The height of a stairs is like 17 centimeters.
Right,
It's like 7 inches.
right. Okay, because in the average American household, a flight of stairs, and I have stairs in my house and I use them 30 times a day, but for some reason I think there's about 12 stair steps in a flight in the United States in homes, residential. Now in a commercial building, because the floors are have a greater separation.
Yes, I mean flats.
Yeah,
Flat.
16. Yeah, 16.
Yes, 16. But for instance, for example, for factories could be more because
Right.
there is a lot of stuff and machinery between flats.
Right. Okay. All right. So 4 flights of stairs is the distance, if you will, that you focused on.
Yes.
Now, what was the minimum time required to do 4 flights of stairs to say to somebody, your heart is good?
Okay, if you can do that in less than 1 minute, that's all right. Because it translates to 9 meds, 10 meds in the laboratory. If you can do it in 45 seconds, this is better. It translates to 10 meds or more in the laboratory. And the bad thing is to do that in more than 1.5 minutes, because these are the patients that most of them are going to have problems. And these patients, in fact, actually these patients were the ones that had bad results when we examined them with the treadmill exercise testing, with or without imaging. We found abnormal results in 60% of these patients who did the stairs test time in more than 1.5 minutes. So you had on one side 1 minute good and 1.5 minute bad. So these simple numbers can help physicians and people to see how if there is a problem going on in themselves.
And so really you can only do this test in a commercial building because the average home does not have 4 continuous flights of stairs that you can go on. You would have to go up and down and up and down. Can this be reduced to a single flight of stairs, you think?
We didn't do the analysis with one fly, with just one fly and going down again and going up again. It would complicate the thing. I think that the exercise should be progressive to achieve these conclusions. So if you don't have if you only have one flight at home, you should go to visit a friend that lives in a flat.
Yeah, in an apartment building or a commercial
or
building.
going to a commercial building, for instance.
Now there's a couple things that I want to point out here. So there are lots of gyms and health clubs that have stair climbing machines, but this wouldn't count because the step is going down and it's alleviating some of the ability for you to lift yourself up. So it's not as challenging on the heart. So if somebody can do 4 flights of stairs, 16 steps per flight on a stair climbing machine in under a minute, that means nothing, right?
I'm not sure. I have done one thing in a gymnastic this test you are talking about, and yes, I feel that it is different, but I cannot explain how it could be translated
Right.
to meds achieved in a laboratory.
Right. It can't be translated because you're not lifting your body on every step. The machine is moving down and assisting you. The other thing
This is a good point. We can do this analysis again, but you but we are going to need a gym. Note that this experiment, we did that just here in the hospital. After the exercise test in the laboratory, we asked the patients to climb up 4 flights in our home hospital.
Right. And I don't think you will be able to do it with the stair climbing machine because there's too many variables. The person can wait for the step to come down, so they're really not stepping up. You know, I mean, there's too many variables. I like the stationary, old-fashioned stairs that you have to step up on. How do you correct for people who have difficulties with their knees, for instance, that they can't do it as fast, but their heart is okay? What do you think?
Okay, the thing is, Carl, that if you can do that in 1.5 minutes, for the reason, for whatever the reason, you are going to have problems because this one thing leads to another. If you cannot walk, you are going to have heart problems, and probably because you have been inactive for a long time,
right,
you already have these problems, and that's why in 60% of these people we discovered heart problems during the exercise testing in the laboratory. Of course, this is for patients who, this is the kind of patients we see that are patients with some symptoms like chest pain or dyspnea, and this is not the same in general population. Of course, the results in a laboratory are going to be better in general population. These are patients with symptoms, but the translation between the meds achieved in a lab and the stairs test time should be the same.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. It sounds to me also that you discovered something else, and that is that it's probably a good idea as a form of exercise to improve cardiovascular conditioning, that walking upstairs would be, maybe you can only do 4 flights of stairs in 1 minute and 45 seconds. So go back every day and do 4 flights of stairs until you could do it in 1.5 minutes, and then continue till you could do it under 1 minute. It sounds to me like you've also discovered an ideal way to make the heart stronger.
Yes, absolutely. I agree completely. In fact, let me say that when we were shut down here in Spain, when we had the complete shutdown in March. This is the exercise I used to do at home. I live in a flat with 10 flats, and I do this 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and that's the way to keep me physically active, because otherwise at home, in the end, is very boring. But this is a good exercise for this pandemic, I would say.
Do you see, speaking of the pandemic, do you see a lot of people, their heart conditions getting worse because of the lockdown?
Not because of the lockdown, because somehow people, because they are not working, because they had a lot of free time. Suddenly, I think that people have a lot of free time, and in fact, I think it has been the opposite thing. I see a lot of, in my town, I see a lot of people doing exercise that you don't see these people before. So I think it's the contrary. What we see in the laboratory nowadays, on the other hand, is patients that had effects because of the COVID pneumonia. And these patients may complain of dyspnea and came to these patients are coming to our consults, to our cardiologist consults. of course, they don't have a cardiology problem, but they have a pneumonic problem.
I got you. Right. So what do you want to tell doctors? Right now, there are doctors that listen to my show. And do you think it's wise that when they have a patient that they're doing a physical on, they have them go out in the hall and go up 4 flights of stairs and time it and say, okay, that's another test we're going to start doing? Do you want to see physicians start to use this very simple but very effective way of gauging heart health?
Yes, I think it is important because, and in fact, I used to I do this in my consult just before even before the results we achieve with this study. I have been always asking patients, whatever the symptoms they have. I have chest pain, I have dyspnea, but whatever. But how many steps can you step up? Because and I take very good attention to that. 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, because this is going to give me a clue in the functional capacity of the patients, no matter the symptoms, because this is an objective measurement. And now, with this study, again, we demonstrated that this has very good correlations with the results of the laboratory.
This is beautiful. I think it's fantastic and so simple. And then people can do it at home. If you're somebody, well, maybe not at home, but you can find a commercial building close to your home. And maybe you're someone who has been told that you're having heart problems. So you buy a treadmill. So you walk and you walk a little further and you walk a little faster, because progression is very important for the heart. You can't just do this day in, day out, because then the heart only gets that strong. So you keep progressing with the effort that you make, and then you go back to the stairs and you test again. And go, oh, look at this. I was able to do it faster. So it gives people a way to quantify their own progress too in their own exercise. I love it. I think it's brilliant. I want to thank you so much, excuse me, for coming on the show today to talk about it. I hope that my audience starts to try this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me, Carl.
Take care.
See you.
Bye-bye. All right, so that's it for today's show. Tomorrow's the Blueprint Power Hour. We got great shows all week long. I hope that you can be here for them. If you can't, there's always the podcast. And, of course, our videos are up on YouTube, so you can always catch them later. Please share the show. I always ask you to share the show. And don't forget, tomorrow we start with the secret word. So the way it's going to work is during a commercial break, I am going to put a word. It's going to be my voice in between 2 commercials. And all you have to do is when you hear it, you email me at onair@superhumanradio.net, the word, the secret word that I said, and either the commercial spot that preceded it or the commercial spot that follows it to be entered to win a box of tasty pastries from Legendary Foods. And we will see you tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you for being here today.